I'll make a motion to approve and adopt.
By Doug,
I'll second.
second by Bob. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Resolution 1196-18. It's, 9618. Resolution authorizing and approving a Pelican Drive detention pond agreement with the Pulaski School District. The whole matter is if we work together jointly, we can save both entities a fair amount of money. And so that agreement has been hammered out and approved by school board on the 27th, I believe.
Nope, they didn't.
They did?
They did not.
They did not. Okay, so we didn't have the,
Right. We're still, there are a couple of questions that the school district had about the agreement. Those are answered. But the agreement has a couple of attachments that Lee Novak is working on, and we haven't gotten those to my knowledge yet. But it is ready to be approved. I think you saw preliminary plans for this already. So it's going to be based on that, but Lee is doing some work to separate out some of the plans and the diagrams and things. So, but it is ready to move forward, and once we approve it, then the school district will approve.
And then any attachments can be approved later?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
typically a lot of the stuff, the attachments are done after the fact.
Okay.
Because they don't want to spend the money until the people approve, of the concept. So we have a motion, a second.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Bruce? Roger?
Gordy.
Gordy, okay, thank you, Gordy. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Number 12, Resolution 1197-18, resolution authorizing and approving TIF district development agreement with Jerry and Gloria Bigelow for TID number 4 housing project development.
This one we do have the attachments for, so that one's ready to sign. I think we reviewed this at the last board meeting when Mr. Bigelow was here. You may recall, or you will recall that this was started out as Black Diamond. They're still going to be the builders, but the owner of the project in the end will be the Bigelows. They will manage the rental units and the facilities that are being put in. But all the work is being done by Black Diamond. So it's essentially the same deal with a different name. So that one's ready to go.
I guess I have one question, and that this is the PAYGO
Yes.
idea, and in the resolution, it mentions about the village kind of upfront paying for some of the sewer, street, or whatever work.
Yeah, that's already been done, actually. The streets and the roads inside the project will all be private.
Okay.
But the road to get there is already paid for by the
We
village.
had it paid last fall, so.
So then it's PAYGO all the way.
Right, so there will be no payments coming from the village until the project is completed. And depending on when it's completed, we'll flip the year, because if it gets completed after January 1, you're not going to see an assessment until the next year. So that would, until the property gets assessed, there is no payments being made by the village. So it's got to be completed, and then the assessments the following year.
Okay. Thank you, good question. Any other questions by the board?
Move to accept the resolution.
By Bob? Yes.
I'll second.
Second by Chris Smith. Any other discussion by the board? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 13, formal capital improvement plan, contracted with Quarles and Brady's. The initial capital improvement plan will be $6,500, and after that there will be a $500 a year maintenance update payment. And this will, again, make it easier for us to borrow money in the future, because that was one of the requirements of the bond rating that we got. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
And this is, before you make a motion to approve, it isn't Quarles and Brady, they work with
It's
R.W.
Baird.
Bird, it's actually R.W. Baird.
R.W. Baird, yes. that correction.
I'll make that motion.
Bruce?
Second.
By Roger? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Operator bartender's license. Karen, can you just read them off? I'm kind of running out of capacity here.
I have. Do these first, because I'm starting to get some renewals in already too. This would be a renewal for Keith A. Warner. This would be for Polka Day Grounds Lions Club. And this would be a renewal Wayne Wood. That would also be for Casey Steak Fry, Polka Days. This one's a renewal James R. Stuczynski, Polka Day Grounds. And I have Kenneth B. Watch renewal, Pulaski Polka Days. And I also have Brian Killinger renewal. This would be Pulaski Polka Days. Those will all be coming in now. There's going to be very few because there's only the current licenses there for 2 years and they expire June 30th of 2018. So for the June board meeting, we'll have a lot of bartender license applications. So just these as renewal.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Doug?
I'll second.
Second by Chris. Any further discussion?
And they'll be contingent upon Chief Mark's police check and contingent to follow all Village of Pulaski ordinances.
Is that okay with the first and the second?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 15, consider to approve temporary Class B license applications for Pulaski Baseball Veterans Memorial Park concession stand / beer tent. Sunday, May 20th, this is the early bird. Friday, June 22nd to Sunday, June 24th, 2018, Summer Classic 1. Friday, July 13th to Sunday, July 15th, Summer Classic 2. And July 27th, 2018 to Sunday, July 29th, 2018, Summer Classic 3.
I'll make that motion.
Bruce?
I'll second.
Second by Bob Gayaski, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Consider to reappoint Mr. Terry Schnabel for a 3-year term as one of the appointments by the villages of Denmark, Wrightstown, and Pulaski to the Brown County Planning Commission. To make this, the 3 villages, Denmark, Pulaski, and Wrightstown, share 2 seats on the Brown County Planning. That's why every 3 years we've got to get, like last year I got reappointed, and this time Terry Schnabel, who is from Wrightstown, is getting reappointed, and we have to consent to that appointment. So I'm the only one in the room, I think, that's ever seen the man. Oh, that was, Paul has seen him.
I'll make the motion to reappoint.
Thank you, Doug.
I'll second.
Bob Gayeski. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We will then notify the Brown County Planning that we agree with the reappointment. Next is number 16A. Oh, that's a very good one. The amended agenda is 16A to include discuss and consider to approve committee and other appointments for the Village of Pulaski. And Karen's got a couple updates that she has in writing and read.
Yeah, we have under Housing Authority, 5-year term. I talked with Larry Pouzin this morning with, it's Larry Pouzin chairman. That open position is with Rose Wyan, and that would be the year that's typed in there, the 2022. And then on the second page, with the Commission on Aging, the 2-year term, Larry Pouzin chairman, Gene Schrader is retired from there, so that's an open position. And there's an open position at the end, so there's actually 9 people, and he has 2 positions open. And then Roger corrected, because I had note the Commission on Aging meets the second Tuesday of every month. I had in there at Brookdale Apartments, they now meet at Parkside Apartments.
Correct.
And that was it with the corrections that I had. There are there's an open position yet at, let's see here, on the last page,
The room tax
with the room
commission.
tax commission.
Mary Whitman was on vacation. Then before she got back on vacation, I went on vacation. So I'm asking you to just leave this open. I have not had a face-to-face discussion whether we could decide. As a chairman, I want her input before we even put a name out. And I don't think it would hurt to leave this open one more month.
This would be where this was formerly Jim Rezick, and then it was open position. And those are the only ones that I changed, because economic development, we had Jim Rezick was on here, Jennifer Rebicki. Okay.
So with that, the notations accepted, could I have a motion to approve the committee appointments?
So move, Reed.
By Roger,
Second.
second by Gordy Black. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Number 7, persons already be heard. Number 7, persons that's already be heard. Third time, persons is already be heard. 18, such other matters is authorized by law. Such other matters is authorized by law. Third time, such other matters is authorized by law. Number 19, department reports, public works.
This week we have our free dumpster week at our shop. It's bring your garbage. Today was a busy day. And we do have our leaf back on our truck, so for the next few weeks, we're gonna be going around collecting our debris. That's,
Try to keep sticks out of the
keep
leaves.
sticks out of the grass and leaf piles, please, and stones.
Stones.
That's all I have.
I want to say publicly that and I'm sure a lot of board members heard from a lot of the citizens were very, very impressed with how well the crew did with that massive snowfall.
Thank you.
So extend our grateful to the crew. Sewer and water, Tom and crew have been very busy at well number 2, and they were still rolling hoses up around 4 o'clock today, and so I guess you just ran out of gas. Don't blame them. Police Department, Mark?
I had to apply for the vest permit for or vest grant for next year. Our ballistic vests that the officers wear are going to expire. They're going to be on a 5-year, so that has to be something to be put into the budget for next year, obviously, because it's a must with the vest. And then the second thing is we're going to be applying for the permit for Polka Days. Any route changes, so I'm going to go with what we've been doing for the last 10, 15 years. And I don't think that there's any specialty considerations to give to the downtown. I mean, last year we did not approve that special parking area. I don't foresee anything this year either. So I just want to make sure that the board, if there's anybody that has anything that they want to add to that permit, I should contact me within the next week or 10 days because we have to submit that information for July.
What special parking permit were you referring to?
Well, we had, in front of like auto parks, we used to have a barrier set up downtown, but since the fire, I don't know really done anything
Yeah,
in classics. I
classics is
don't
on, yeah.
expect to have
Oh,
anything
I
there
see,
either.
okay.
So on and so forth. And Zelensky's, I don't know if they're gonna run out of it this year at all.
No,
So,
not polka days anyway, no.
I don't foresee anything special for downtown, but if there is, would you let me know? That's all I have.
Thank you, Mark. Karen, do you have anything?
I just want to state we have 2 elections coming up. We have a primary on Tuesday, August 14th, and then we have the fall election on Tuesday, November 6th, which is the governor's race is the top one that's on there. So we are not, the village of Pulaski is not involved in the Brown County. I believe it's District 1. That one, they're having an election on May 15th, the primary, and then the election will be held on June 12th. So Village of Pulaski isn't in that one. It's like half of Brown County is with us, that special election in the primary, and half of it is not, so.
Everybody's recovering from colds. Thank you, Karen. Communications, Planning and Zoning Commission will be held on May 15th. May
16th. May 16th.
May 16th, at Wednesday, 6 PM at the Pulaski Village Hall. We need to schedule a meeting for the committee of the whole, and I am suggesting Monday, May 21st, 2018 at 5 PM because the next Monday is actually a holiday.
Why is that in red? Can you read that? The 21st? What does it say?
Victoria Day. Canada.
Yeah, well, yeah, so do that. What do we do?
That's okay if we have it that day then? Okay,
Is that okay with everybody?
yeah,
Okay.
Sure.
At 5?
5?
Yeah, okay.
Next, the Economic Development Ad Hoc Committee meeting is set for Monday, June 4th, 2018, at noon at the Village of Pulaski Police Department Training Room. And the regular village board meeting for June will be Monday, June 4th, 2018 at 6 PM at the Pulaski Village Hall. Is that keep with your approval?
Yep.
And number 21 is a review of closed session regulations and requirements under section 1984 Wisconsin statutes for attorney Fantastic.
All right, Karen asked me to, we've been talking about this for a couple of years, I want to pass out the big one first.
Oh, boy.
This is some guidelines from the Attorney General's office about what's involved with closed sessions. If you really want to put yourself to sleep at night, or if you're really interested in this stuff, have at it. It's about 50 pages, but some of it's actually some attachments, so.
Thank you.
And got a smaller attachment, only 3 pages, which sort of summarizes all of this and then things we can kind of talk about tonight.
Gordy, as a new board member, you have to.
I do, huh? Report back to us.
Yeah, give us,
Give an in-service at the next board meeting.
I don't know if I signed on for that.
All right,
small
so
print.
let's talk about closed sessions. To talk about closed sessions, you have to start with open sessions. So as it talks about in there, Wisconsin is sometimes referred to as a blue sky state, but essentially it means that all government activities are to be conducted in public. It goes into depth, the larger document goes into depth of what is a governmental body. It covers commissions, it covers committees, covers boards. There are some odd entities that aren't covered, and that talks about that in more detail. But for most of the things that you do as board members here, they're going to be considered a governmental body, and it's open to the public. So that's the presumption, that anytime a board meets, it's to be in open session. You have to go through the notice requirements that Karen handles, but and it also comes into play with what constitutes a meeting. We kind of talked about this a little bit before when you were talking about the
Quorum?
the quorum issue. That all comes into play with that. But this is really designed tonight to just talk about closed sessions. So again, the presumption is that a meeting is to be open, but there are certain exceptions under the law that allow you to go into closed session. Those exceptions are listed there. There's 11 of them in the statutes. About 8 or 9 of them, I think, here apply to the village. And I think we've talked about most of these over the years. But there's a summary here of what they are. I've given you the statute that gives a little bit more in-depth as to what each of those exemptions are. So before you can go into closed session, it has to be published. The publishing requirements are simply, it doesn't have to be published in the paper, but it's simply that it's got to be an agenda that starts an open session, and then for some one of these exceptions, goes into closed session. And again, if you've been here before for these things, Reed will, as required by law, will read the agenda item plus the statement of why you're going into closed session with a reference to the particular statute number. And then you take a roll call vote to go into closed session. So that's all part of the requirements that are in the statute. Now, you can publish an item on your agenda that, consideration of adjourning to closed session. You don't have to go into closed session. In fact, the law would recommend that you try to avoid closed session. So even though you may have a legitimate issue or reason for going into closed session under one of these exceptions, you don't have to. And that's why you go through the voting process. You have to vote to go into closed session, requires a majority vote. To go to closed session, I was up in Egg Harbor about 6 months ago when they had closed session on the agenda, and they voted to whether to not to go into closed session, and they didn't get a majority vote. So they didn't go, they just conducted the business in open session. So again, it requires that majority vote to get there. One of the other things is that that I put in here is who can attend a closed session. Obviously, it's the members of the board who are officially on that board that's going into closed session, but you have the right to invite other interested persons into that closed session. Also, if it is a committee of this board, other board members do have the right to show up and attend that closed session as a member of the public. They're not a voting member, but they do have the right to show up at a closed session. So if it's a labor committee, another board member could show up. They can't vote, they can't speak, unless the board opens the floor to them, but you can show up. So as a board member, you have a right to show up to all of those other closed session meetings. We talked about the procedure for going into closed session. That's in there. Again, once the action gets to closed session, typically there's a question at law of whether you can actually vote in a closed session. There's one case that sort of went off track and talked about voting in closed session and said that you could. There's another case that says that you, again, kind of going off track of what was in the case, kind of commented that you could vote in closed session. So the Attorney General's office reviewing both of these, it's their recommendation, as I've referenced in here, that you don't vote in closed session. Now, having said that, again, in closed session, you can sort of take a straw poll of where you are, get a consensus of where things are, but you can't vote to complete the action in closed session. As you'll see in other things, you come out of closed session and take an action item in open session afterwards if you need to. And then to come out of closed session, it's kind of the same thing. As you went in, you have to take a vote to go back to open session. It's always advisable to have your open session after the closed session is over. Some municipalities got to be late at night, there was nobody there, and so they actually withheld going back into open session until the next day at a next meeting, and that caused all kinds of problems. So regardless of how long it takes, you should always come back out of open session or closed session, go back into open session. If you're not done with business, you can always call another closed session at the next meeting. So again, you want to close out that section and then go back into open session to continue on or to close the meeting. What does closed session mean? It means that whatever's said, whatever's done in closed session, stays in closed session. You can't talk about it outside of closed session. There is, and I just had to look this up because I didn't know the answer either. There was a question that came up in one of the other municipalities that we represent, is that they had an issue in closed session that dealt with whether or not they were interested in buying property and how much they were going to bid. So they went into closed session on a competitive bargaining thing. They decided in closed session as an amount that they were going to offer for the property, and that offer then was rejected. It came out, authorized the board or the administrator to make an offer on the property. The offer was not accepted. Afterwards, they got a question from another prospective buyer. What did you offer? Well, because the decision was made in closed session as to what to offer, they couldn't reveal that. Even though they were no longer in the bidding process, it was gone on to somebody else. Other people were interested in bidding on it. So, but the result at the end of the day is that even though you're maybe done with that project, if it was done in closed session and never discussed with Dollar, in that case in open session, you can't discuss it, and even the staff can't release information about what happened in that closed session. So again, the bottom line is what's discussed in closed session has to stay in closed session, unless it comes out in the public in open session in some fashion. So again, that's the confidentiality component of it. It carries forward forever, really. Until it comes into open session, it stays in closed session.
The only thing I could add is when you want to go into open session and come back out of it, it always requires a roll call vote.
Yes. Yes. All right.
No,
So,
here's the
again,
last chance to ask Bill any questions you got.
enjoy the reading. But, it does actually, the Attorney General's does actually go into quite a bit of depth about some of the intricacies and bizarre things that go on dealing with closed session. So.
And that's why too, with the agendas, with the ones we have upcoming on page 3, we have adjourn to closed session, and then for each item, we return back to open session, adjourn to closed session, no matter how many of them we have, it's closed and open, closed and open.
Correct.
I could only recall maybe one, possibly two situations where it would have been nice to have another board member in the labor negotiations meeting for the sake of going into that closed session and somebody just has to withhold a vote or a consideration or a conversation for the sake of one more, open the floor to another board member, maybe expand that conversation. But good to know now.
Thank you very much for the update, Bill. With that, item number 22 is adjourned to close.